let's experiment with creating better and more interesting pads and drones. So a lot of atmospheric music, a lot of film music and TV stuff these days uses pads and drones. And for a live show I did recently, it was in Bremen in Germany with the Limitless Orchestra and the Deutsche Kammerphilharmonie. They wanted an opening to the show that is 6 minutes of G. And it has a sort of, in the beginning, Mother Earth, this kind of quality. There's a voiceover that happens over it. So it was 6 minutes, and it's one guy with a keytar, so he's kind of limited in terms of how much playing you can do with both hands. And similarly, it was really painful to listen to and to play just holding G for 6 minutes with a kind of boring sine wave. So I wanted to design an instrument that was really dynamically responsive and had an interesting mixture of sounds. So I'm going to talk through the couple of little tips and tricks that I employed to get this effect. The first thing is I blended together 3 different instruments. Now they're all Spitfire LABS plugin sounds. And I created a pad on the left, a bass in the middle, and a pad on the right. I'm going to turn all my processing off here first so we can hear the bare sounds. And we start out with this Arctic swell sound. There's only 2 presets on this sound, decay and swells. So the left side is decay. In it, I've cranked the releases up pretty high. Sustain is all the way. Decay is almost halfway. Variation is halfway. A little bit of reverb on there and a nice sort of long attack so it doesn't just go whenever I hit it. And also when I let go, you get that nice long trail. If I was to turn the attack down, it's a little bit too immediate coming in, and if I turn the release down, as soon as I let go, it just stops. So for me, having the release nice and long meant that Jojo Ganch, our keyboard player, could play and then let go occasionally and then play again, so that it felt like the sound was breathing a little bit more, and also so that his hands wouldn't get tired from just holding down in that one position the whole time. I then added in a little bit of EQ, a lot of EQ to get rid of all the top ends, so you'll hear the difference. So basically taking all the high-end information away, really trying to muffle that stuff and bring it right down. The main reason for doing that is because when I have 3 different sounds combined together, if they're sending lots of high-end information and then there's a voiceover and there's instruments playing, it'll get turned down, or at the very worst sort of all EQ'd out in the PA. And this is the same, this bank of sounds we're using is the same for the keyboard player for the whole show. So each sound I wanted to tune it in a way to make it that it worked for what it was needed for. Next thing was the pad on the opposite side. Same Spitfire LABS plugin, Arctic swells, this time on the swells preset. You can hear that one's a lot more breathy. This sound is a combination of some violin and some sort of flute stuff that was captured. And in this one, again, I've gone the release right up, so I've got a nice long trail on the end of it. Sustain way up, decay almost all the way up, variation again halfway, a lot more reverb, and again that sort of gradual attack where it breathes in. Again, EQ, I got rid of a lot of the top end, so it sounds a little bit more grainy and mid-rangey. And then, special move, added in Valhalla Supermassive. So I'm on a plate setting here on 100% wet mix, so the whole of that sound is happening inside the reverb. The effect this creates is that the 2 different pads oscillate and move in different ways. The easiest way to think about it is, if you had a planet and you had 2 items that were in orbit around it, so they're moving around the planet in the same way, let's say east to west, and then suddenly one of them starts to go north to south. So you get this kind of effect. One going in a circle, one going top to bottom. And then occasionally, boop, they'll have a point where they connect, and and then they carry on in their orbit. Now they're both orbiting the same musical information, let's call it, but the points at which they coincide are few and far between. So it's a good way to approach this kind of thing where you want to make interest and modulation and stuff like that by setting similar sounds with something fundamentally different in them. So in this case, the settings I had on the preset were different, and I put it through that plate reverb. In the middle of it all, we have another Labs plugin. This one is called Black Hole. This is very dirty. The plus bad preset, again, I've cranked the release right up. The reverb is up, the attack is up. Even with the release up, I would have liked a little bit more going on, so I've added in the yak delay from Safari Pedals. And I get a kind of darker, less top end in the repeats there as it goes. And then also I've applied channel EQ to get rid of all that fizzy top end information. So again, I'm EQing here to make space for different things, and all three together So far what we've done is create a pad on the left, a pad on the right, bass in the center. I've EQ'd them to make a lot less top end in general and less bottom end in the pads. And then the final trick was adding delay and a sort of reverb and delay so that each of them has a different trail coming off the end. The final trick I suppose we could look at here is in main stage you can assign in your layer editor a different octave for each of the, or a different range for each of the instruments to work in. So the sub bass only works in that first octave. If I go to the next G, nothing happens. The reason I did this was because that particular sound is so foggy and so dirty. If it starts to happen in the higher octaves, it's going to begin to cloud out and really gunge up these higher, more fluty kind of sounds that I want to create. Similarly, the Arctic swells on the right side, that C is the lowest register sound that I can get for that, so it can't happen any lower. And then finally, the Arctic swells decay on the other side is everywhere. So it happens all over the keyboard. Again, it makes the instrument slightly, I don't want to say unpredictable, but different things happen in different places, so you can play it, even just playing 3 octaves of G, and how gently or how hard you hit those higher notes will provide very different kinds of effects. And you can sort of let go at certain times. So you can have this really interesting evolving sound. And I mean that for a lot of things that would work as a sound bed for an entire scene. If you were doing a cue, you could do that and just have one instrument play over the top of it and your cue's done. In this live show, it just so happened that we needed such a long period of drone, so this gave a fantastically playable, very dynamic, something that sounded wonderful in a stereo PA in a nice big concert hall, and it wasn't hideously painfully boring to listen to or to play. Those are things to keep in mind when you're making instruments. So in the meantime, like, subscribe, follow, love, move in with me, let's run away together, all those things. And if you have any questions, feel free to put things in the comments or fire me a DM. And if you'd like me to talk about any other aspects of composing, orchestrating, or sound design, then feel free to send me a message and I will have a look at it in a future video. In the meantime, take it easy.